Millions of people are born each year, while billions of people roam this earth. However, millions of people equal overpopulation. Overpopulation equals less food, and less food equals death and destruction.
A treaty settles a war, a compromise settles a conflict. The overpopulation of China prompted the one-child policy, which represented the equilibrium between having no children and many children. Every coin has two sides, and each side represents a different standpoint. Besides benefiting the government and the civilians, the one-child policy also had its downfalls. The policy sparked uproar because many people felt that the government had too much power within society. The one-child policy both caused and resolved population issues in China. In 1949, the Communist Party of China took over. It was led by Mao Zedong, also known as General Mao or Chairman Mao. Besides being the leader of the Communist Party of China, he was also the leader of the People's Republic of China. In the year of 1958, General Mao created a plan called the Great Leap Forward. This encouraged many people to have as many children as possible in order to make a stronger workforce and help the economy grow. He thought that if there were more people in China, the nation would be more powerful. He even went as far as outlawing birth control methods and abortions. Chairman Mao once said, "Even if China's population multiplies many times, she is fully capable of finding a solution. The solution is production." Before the Great Leap Forward, officials tried to keep the population of China low because it was an estimated 400 million. However, after General Mao's plan was put into place, the population skyrocketed. It reached nearly 1 billion in less than 20 years. Homes held multiple families and living conditions were very crowded. As General Mao once stated, "Let 100 flowers bloom, let 100 schools of thought contend." Although the economy blossomed and the workforce grew, the sudden growth of population caused many consequences. First, when you have millions of people, these people need places to live. Each of the citizens in China require food that is cooked on a stove or with fire, and houses that must be heated or air-conditioned. These people also need food from animals such as cows and other cattle. Additionally, these people each breathe out countless liters of carbon dioxide daily. The toxic gases released from stoves, fires, heating, and air conditioning can harm the environment. Also, the combination of methane released from cattle and carbon dioxide released from humans can cause the ozone layer to gradually deteriorate. Therefore, the overpopulation of China had many negative effects on the environment. Moreover, there were many famines because the ratio of people to food was not equivalent. There were more people than there was food. Additionally, the amount of fresh water was scarce. The supply of rations slowly decreased to a point where 30 million people have starved and died. Therefore, the Great Leap Forward had a negative impact on the citizens of China. During the 1970s, population growth was a concern for a majority of nations worldwide, except for China. However, toward the end of the 1970s, China's population had grown to about 970 million. As more and more people began to die because of the harsh living conditions, China decided that they should take action. In 1979, the president, Deng Xiaoping, proposed the one-child policy, a policy that would limit the amount of children allowed per family down to one. The one-child policy is a very controversial topic. The policy has many benefits yet many flaws. Many believe that the one-child policy gives too much control to the government. They think that the government should not have the right to tell you how many children you are allowed to have. When parents put their children up for adoption, they caused many issues. First, many girls were put into orphanages. Families preferred boys over girls because boys passed down the family name. This caused more boys in China than girls. Then, more people had kept their female children. Now, rather than having mostly girls in orphanages, 98% of the children in orphanages have disabilities. Additionally, an issue arises, one that is commonly called the 4-2-1 problem. This means that a singular child must be able to support their 2 parents and their 4 grandparents. Children who must be able to take care of 6 relatives often struggle to take care of all of them. If there were 2 children, they could use their earnings and themselves to help them take care of their parents and grandparents. However, in 2011, China has allowed couples who are both only children to have 2 children rather than only 1.
Furthermore, there is an imbalance between the working citizens and the elderly. Now, China's workforce has dropped to 4.87 million people as opposed to the 3.71 million the year before. The workforce is lower due to the fact that more people were born before 1979 in contrast to the fewer people born after the one-child policy was enforced. Hence, the one-child policy creates a disproportion between the employed population of China and the elderly.
However, like everything that's flawed, the one-child policy had its strengths as well. For example, the one-child policy prevented over 400 million births. This policy benefited the country greatly.
The one-child policy helped China overcome population issues. However, it still gave people the freedom and joy of caring for a child. The one-child policy was a compromise between having no children, taking away the happiness that parents experience, and having too many children, causing many issues with food and the environment. Thus, the one-child policy was a compromise because it created a balance between the number of children people could have.
Primarily, the one-child policy helped with food rations. Rather than having millions of people die from famine, the one-child policy allowed the government to take control of the supply. With less people in the country, there are less people to feed. When people think of the one-child policy, they often think that it was a policy where families with more than one child are punished and their children are killed. However, there are many exceptions instead. For example, if both people in a couple are only children, they are allowed to have 2 children. Also, parents with disabled children are sometimes allowed to have another child. Plus, people are able to pay a social maintenance fee and secure the child in Communist China's all-important household registration. However, only wealthy people were able to pay a fee to the government to help keep their child. Although not commonly thought of, the one-child policy has had many compromises to help the society. Additionally, the one-child policy is a very tolerated policy. Many people think that it is a very reasonable policy that can benefit China. Although originally, people thought that it was unnecessary, as time passed, they realized that it reduces the chance of them running out of food. Therefore, many people are in favor of the one-child policy. Furthermore, there were less people in poverty. Due to the fact that less people are in the country, more people have houses that aren't crowded. The poverty rates are lowering and only 0.1% of the country's population is homeless. During the Great Leap Forward, many were living in very crowded houses and the population of homeless people skyrocketed. The one-child policy lets people live a more luxurious life.
During former President Barack Obama's time in office, his press secretary, Josh Earnest, said in a White House briefing,
"While this recent policy change does represent a positive step, we also look forward to the day when birth limits are abandoned altogether, including things like forced abortion and sterilization."
Therefore, the one-child policy overall has been both beneficial and harmful to China. Although placing a harsh and sudden rule upon society, the outcomes were very reasonable. When Mao Zedong created the Great Leap Forward, it caused many issues including famine and crowded living conditions. The one-child policy was able to stop the overpopulation. However, it caused many issues among citizens. Hence, the one-child policy can be considered both a conflict and a compromise.